In my ongoing obsession with 9/11, I find, well, lots of particular elements to be interesting, but this is one of them. On 9/11, obviously, as everyone knows, the communication of the emergency services with each other and with different departments and between them and etc. was a complete mess. The firemen had trouble talking to the cops had trouble talking to the firemen, everyone had trouble talking to EMS. The NYPD actually found out via one of their helicopters they could see, I guess it was the North Tower buckling, where it had been hit because the fire made all of the beams and joints expand, and then when the fire moved on, they cooled and contracted, and that's how the tower fell. But you could see it in a lot of pictures that people took that day where it was sort of buckling in from all sides at the point of impact where all the fires had been burning. And the NYPD actually saw this in their helicopters, but were unable to successfully transmit the information to the FDNY. If they had known that, they definitely would have called a general evacuation. And especially after the first tower collapsed, there was a general call for evacuation for the FDNY and the NYPD, but a lot of firemen didn't hear it. A lot of them heard it but didn't understand the severity. A lot of them didn't even know the other building had collapsed. A lot of it had a lot to do with departmental differences. There's a story of a bunch of NYPD officers were evacuating the building and they came upon some FDNY firemen and said, "Hey, they just said to evacuate, let's get out of here." And the firemen didn't even react. They just sat there and they ended up dying in the tower. And a lot of people wondered why afterwards, and a lot of people at the FDNY were like, there's no way a fireman's going to do what a cop tells them, that sort of thing. But the communication system was underprepared and overwhelmed and just a complete mess. Their radios didn't work in the buildings. They couldn't talk to their own guys. The command post was set up in a lobby of each building, and all the chiefs would be there, and they would be trying to speak with their guys who were going up the stairs, and they wouldn't be able to. You can see them in a lot of footage. They're walking around holding their radios out like someone trying to get bars, like a cell phone signal. They had some repeaters, but they thought they weren't working. They actually were, and some of them eventually got switched on, but they just had so much trouble communicating with themselves, communicating inside their own departments, and communicating with other departments and other emergency services. And there's a plethora of papers and such written about that, the communication issues on 9/11. But of course, plane crashing into the building, destroyed most of the building's infrastructure, the PA system in the building, which Chief Pfeiffer attempted to use, but also the elevators. The impact cut elevator lines, and elevators went free-falling and everything like that. As everyone knows, there were no working elevators when the firemen first got there, so they had to walk up the stairs. Eventually, Battalion 7 Chief Orio Palmer got to the site very early, single-handedly fixed an elevator and got it working from the lobby up to the 42nd floor sky lobby. And that was the only elevator they had throughout the entire rescue efforts. They were trying desperately to get elevators working, and this was the only one they had, and it only went up to 40. In Tower 2, the impact floors were 77 to 85. 78 was the sky lobby with all the elevator banks. So, and of course, unfortunately, the impact of the plane killed a lot of people because they were all in the sky lobby waiting to take the elevator down to evacuate the building, and that's when the plane hit. But the impact floor that really made a difference was the 78th, because that's when everything started. The fires were 10 stories, but in the second tower, it started at floor 78. Chief Orio Palmer single-handedly fixed this elevator, which they then began to use. He rode it up to the 40th or 41st floor. He was a marathon runner, and he was a very, very fit, very athletic man. And he ran marathons, triathlons, all kinds of stuff. So he hoofed it up to the 78th floor from the 40th. And he did like 10 stories in 10 minutes. It's a big deal. He really hoofed it. Made it up to the 78th floor. The reason that's a big deal is he was the only person, period, to make it up to the 78th floor. He was the only fireman, the only rescue worker, the only person, period, to arrive at the scene from the lobby and get up to the impact zone, and he described what he saw. And his description that he gave, his brief little description, is the only thing we know, really, about those impact floors. His men were just a couple of stories below him helping evacuate some injured civilians. They were on like 71, 72, 70, something like that. But he was the only one who made it all the way up to 78, the sky lobby, the impact floor. And he described the fires that were burning just on the 78th floor, not the gargantuan fires that were on the floors above, because only the wings and a tiny bit of the fuselage, just a little bit of the plane had hit floor 78. The majority had hit above, and there were just those massive, massive fires burning up there. But he described the fires on the 78th floor, which weren't that big because it was a sky lobby. There just wasn't that much there to burn. And for the longest time, the Port Authority refused to release the final radio communications with these firemen, with Chief Palmer. But eventually they did, and it's been featured. You can hear it in a few different documentaries. But there's just something so particular, and there's something about that. I mean, this guy, Chief Palmer, was the only fireman to get up to the impact zone. And minutes after he made it there, the building collapsed. And when we think about 9/11 and the FDNY response, we think of like they were going up the stairs, they were trying to help people, they were trying to put the fire out, they were trying to get there, and the building just collapsed. But it's even more interesting than that because they actually made it. Like, they made it. Chief Palmer made it to the impact floor and began directing firefighting strategies. He was giving out orders until seconds before the building collapsed. He was saying he needed 2 firemen to knock down 2 fires. Like, he made it to the fire, and he was beginning to direct firefighting. That's when the tower collapsed. We just barely made it there, but we did make it there. Well, we didn't, but Chief Palmer did. Most of them were either in lower floors going up the stairs trying to get there, in the process of climbing up, 80 stories with 60 pounds of gear on, or they were on lower floors assisting trapped civilians, assisting injured civilians. But Chief Palmer, and maybe some of his men, Chief Palmer made it to the impact zone. And right after he did, the building collapsed. There's just something so powerful about that to me. He made it. He did his final marathon up those stairs. He made it to the impact zone. And it was like, okay, we're here. And that's when the building collapsed. We just didn't have the time. But Chief Palmer actually made it. And his men weren't far behind. They were just a couple floors behind because they had to assist some civilians. They would get there soon enough, and if the buildings had stood longer, they would have begun fighting the fire. Because, you look back at some news coverage of that day, and I think it was CNN or someone like that, they mentioned at some point, well, the smoke looks whiter as opposed to how black it was earlier. It seems like they're getting water on that fire. There was no firefighting that day. They did not put water on that fire. They did not even reach that fire. But in Tower 2, which stood longer, Chief Orio Palmer actually made it, and we have his description of what he saw. And that's what you'll be hearing next. And his actual description is, you'll hear it, it's somewhere there in the middle, but I decided to include the entire thing to give you context. His words are in red.
Science. I just got a report from the director of Morgan Stanley. 78 seems to have taken the brunt of the stuff. There's a lot of bodies. They said the stairway is clear all the way up, though. All right, 10-4, Scott. What floor are you on? 48 right now. All right, keep walking. We're coming up behind you. You want me to relay? Yeah, Steve, tell people at Palmer they got reports that there's more planes in the area. We may have to back down here. 747 Alpha to 7. Steve. One 5 to 1-5 roof. reports of another incoming plane. You may have to take cover. Stay in the stairwell. 10-4. 1-5 to 1-5 roof. That plane is ours. I repeat, it's ours. What floor are you on, Scotty? 54. All right, keep making your way up. We're behind you. 10-4. 1-5 to 1-5 OB. 5 OB. All right, Tommy, listen carefully. I'm sending all the injured down to you on 40. You're going to have to get them down to the elevator. There's about 10 to 15 people coming down to you. Okay. 10 civilians coming down. 1-5 to OB. Got that. I'm on 40 right now. All right, Tommy, when you take people down to the lobby, try to get an EMS crew back. Definitely. Battalion 7 ladder, 1-5 roof, what's the progress? 6-3, battalion. 10-4. Battalion 7. Battalion 9. Orio, I couldn't find a bank to bring me up there any higher. I'm on the 40th floor. What can I do for you? We're going to have to hook it. I'm on 69 now, so we need a higher bank, please. What stairway are you in, Orio? Stand on the building, boys. Attack 1 Alpha. Battalion 7, ladder 1-5 roof. What floor? Battalion 9 to Battalion 7? Battalion 9. Orio, I'm going to try to get a couple of CFRD engines on the 40th floor, so send any victims down here. I'll start up the staging area. Hey, the fireman said this elevator works for party. If we get some more cars in those banks running, we'll be all right. 1-5 to Battalion 7. Colorado 1-5. What do you got up there, Chief? I'm still in boys' stairway, 74th floor. No smoke or fire problem. The walls are breached, so be careful. Yeah, 10-4. I saw that on 68. All right, we're on 71. We're coming up behind you. All right, 10-4. 6 more to go. Let me know when you see fire. Marshal on 75. 1-5 to 1-5 OB. 1-5 to 1-5 OB. 1-5 OB. Tommy, have you made it back down to the lobby yet? The elevator's screwed up. You can't move it? I don't want to get stuck in that shaft. Tommy, it's imperative that you try to get down to the lobby command post and get some people up to 40. We got injured people up here on 70. If you make it to the lobby command post, see if they can somehow get elevated past the 40th floor. We got people injured all the way up here. 7. Yeah, Chief, I'm on 5-5. I got a rest. I'll try to get up there as soon as possible. 10-4. Anybody see the Highway 1 car? Highway 1 car. We need it for an escort to the hospital for a fireman. Battalion 7. 4-5. 1-5 to 1-5 roof and iron. Battalion 60 command post. Battalion 7 Alpha. Freddie, come on over by us. Hey, ladder 1-5. We got two isolated pockets of fire. We should be able to knock it down with 2 lines. Where you know that? 78th floor, numerous 1045 call runs. What stand you in, Orio? 7 Alpha, the lobby command post. 1-5 to Battalion 7? Oh, 915. Chief, what stand you in? South Stairway, Adam. South Tower. 478? 10-4 over here. Numerous civilians. We have 2 engines up here. All right, 10-4, we're on our way. Battalion 7, ladder 1-5. 1-5. I'm going to need 2 of your firefighters. Adam, stairway to knock down 2 fires. We got a house line stretch. We can get some water on it. Knock it down, okay? All right, 10-4, we're coming up with chance. We're on 77 now in the B stair. I'll be right to you. 1-5, 1-5. 171, we're coming right up. Division 3, lobby command to the SEALCOM command post. Hey, operations tower 1 to 4 above battalion 9. Battalion 9 to command post. Battalion 7, operations tower 1 to battalion 9. I need you on the 4 above 79. We have access stairs going up to 79. Okay. All right, I'm on my way up, Orio. 15 OV to 15. 15 OV, Battalion 7, Operations Tower 1. Stuck in the elevator shaft. You're going to have to get a different elevator. We're chopping through the wall to get out. Radio lobby command with that. Tower 1.